Hello Internet, and welcome to my live reaction for Yona of the Dawn, chapter 195. When we last left our heroes, we continued the Yon-Hi flashback. As Yona was born, Il acted oddly cold towards Suwon. It was heavily implied that Il married Kashi because Kashi had seen that her daughter would be the reincarnation of Hiryuu, which has all kinds of implications about Il that hopefully will be delved into in this chapter. And the realization that the reincarnation of Hiryuu came from somewhere entirely outside of the clan seemingly was the catalyst for the Scarlet Disease activating in Yon-Hi. She's not told Yu-Hon this, but a couple of years later, Yu-Hon is dying. Not Yu-Hon, Junam is dying. The current emperor, emperor before Il, is dying. And that's kind of where we leave off going into 195. So first we have our magazine cover of Yona and Hawk sharing grapes, it looks like. I don't know, it's a cool thing. And so we open with Yu-Hon, I think, at Junam's bedside, and he asks, "What did you just say?" "Father, right now you're not in the full use of your judgment due to the illness." And we see that Il is there with him. "We can continue this conversation after you regain your presence of mind, and what's more important, after you recover a little." But Junam stops him. "My sons, I have more to say, so listen. I don't have long. The next sovereign of this country is Il. This is the King of Kokas, Junam's last peremptory command." So yeah, that's the moment. We don't see his reasoning, but I'm still very convinced it has to do with Yu-Hon's slaughter of the priests, given that Junam and Il are both very religious. But anyway, 2 days later, His Majesty Junam breathed his last. The successor was Lord Il. That came as a violent shock, not only within the royal palace and to the Sky Tribe, but to all the 5 tribes. After all, the undefeated conqueror Lord Yu-Hon, who enjoyed immense popularity with the people, had been expected to become an even greater king than His Majesty Junam had been. And we see all the 5 generals, their different reactions of kind of taking it. They're all kind of stoic, but very much unhappy with it. I do like the little added bit of having Hawk in the same panel with Moondog. I guess not exactly foreshadowing his rise to general, but whatever. Even Lord Yu-Hon himself. And we see Yu-Hon at his desk, holding his head in his hands. Why Il, old man? Il is a waste. He's not up to the task. Why wasn't it I? And Yon-Hi just watches him from the side of the room. After the temple ceased to exist, His Majesty Junam and Lord Il had piously offered their prayers at the Crimson Dragon King's shrine in the underground of the castle. Ultimately, Lord Yu-Hon concluded they had never forgiven him for condemning the priest to death. It became very painful to him. Because he had tried to protect me, Lord Yu-Hon was not chosen. And we see, Yu-Hon still head in hands, agonizing over the fact that saving his wife, or what he saw as saving his wife, whether or not it actually saved her is another debate, but what he saw as saving his wife is what led to his fall from grace. But then we see Suwon and Yona playing in the garden, a break from all of the king drama, as Yon-Hi and an attendant watch them. And Yon-Hi feels a pain, probably from the Scarlet Disease. Ugh. And the attendant calls to her, "Lady Yon-Hi!" But as she falls, Kashi comes over and catches her. "Don't overexert yourself." And Yon-Hi tells her, "I'm doing as much as I can, because I have thought of raising the successor to the throne as my role." But of course it's not her role anymore, because Il is now the king. "Kashi, you sense that Yona is the Crimson Dragon King, right? Is that connected to Lord Il's being chosen as the king? Did you tell His Majesty Junam of it? That she's the Crimson Dragon King?" "Whether I did or didn't, this fate won't change." "Then, is my role already over?" But she thinks to herself, no, it was never my rules to begin with. I said this a lot last time. This idea that the scarlet disease is caused by some great stress is deeply appealing to me, especially because I think that might mean that Suwon's disease started when he killed Il, which is a fascinating thing to think about. I don't know. It's just really interesting stuff. Anyway, Kashi tells her, in spite of the blood you carry in your veins, you're merely a human being. That child, too, has no special powers. From now on, and that child is Suwon. This one is Yona. From now on, that child will have everything she can take in her own grasp. Which is not what Yon-Hi needs to hear. And you are the same. That's interesting. But Yon-Hi counters, I have never taken anything in my grasp. Lady Yon-Hi, if there's anyone who is happy just because you're alive, can't you have faith in that? And Yon-Hi says, I wonder about that. If I'm not there... but Kashi says, it seems like Yon-Hi is starting to pass out. Lady Yon-Hi, the truth is, I too want to talk more with you. But yeah, Yon-Hi just collapses on the ground. The attendant comes over. Lady Yon-Hi! And Suwon and Yona watch. And then we cut to Yu-Hon looking over her in bed. Lord Yu-Hon, I heard you collapse in the gardens. I apologize. I felt a little dizzy. I'm already better. Yon-Hi, and Yu-Hon grabs her by puts his hand over hers. I said I would protect you, didn't I? Don't hide anything from me. As you will recall, she's been hiding the disease for 2 years, and we see she starts to tear up. And they hug. I revealed to him that I had contracted the Crimson Illness. And then we cut to Yona and Suwon. Suwon? You're leaving the castle? Yes, I heard Mother's moving to a quiet place to take care of her health. Is Lady Yon-Hi alright? I will no longer be able to see you, Suwon. We see the start of her infatuation with Suwon has already started to take root, though we all know how that ends up. And Suwon pats her head. It's okay. Even after I move, I'll come see you. And we're now back in Yon-Hi. I'll be leaving the Crimson Dragon Castle soon. I wonder if I can go on living like this. Lady Yon-Hi, His Majesty... and Yon-Hi thinks this is someone... Yon-Hi can barely see, but she hears her attendant. Someone is here? Who? And she sees that it's Il, standing over her. Lord Il? And then Il tells her, it's okay if you stay as you are, Miss Yon-Hi. Don't move, please. And we have a translator note here. She's already married, but Mrs. sound too formal for their relationship, so I'm writing as if they still address each other as when they first met. Alright, that's a thing to take note of. I heard you were ill. I came to convey my best wishes. After all, we haven't been able to meet much at this point. And Yon-Hi thinks, Lord Il came to convey his best wishes? To me? And Il thinks, I must have broken your heart, no? Even though you did nothing wrong, you've gone through cold days. Lord Il, what are you? I feel the same. And Il continues, I'm grateful to you for having been so kind to Kashi. I wish I'd been able to do more for you and for Kashi. All these Yon-Hi lines, by the way, are just internal, not external. Please take care of your health. Go easy about it, and get well. I'm sorry, Lord Il. And then we see that Yu-Hon is behind the curtain listening to this. And then we see Il's coronation. Yu-Hon and Judo both watch. And then Yu-Hon comes back to Yon-Hi's room. She's still been in bed, wasn't able to see the coronation. So she asks him, how was the coronation? It sure was subdued. There was no cheering at all. Everyone was looking at Il's crown with dark expressions, as if at a prisoner of a defeated country. So yeah, we're seeing part of the, we see that even from the very beginning, The people didn't really want Il to be king. Though at this point, it's not because of the giving away land to other countries or letting corrupt nobles go on by. It's just because everyone thinks that Yu-Hon would have been the better king. But anyway, Yon-Hi asks, or no, Yon-Hi just is silent for that for a moment before Yu-Hon continues. But Il kept himself dignified through the entire ceremony amid that atmosphere. One sec. As for me, I was getting angrier and angrier at the sulking populace. And Yu-Hon was like, eh? I thought, what attitude is that towards their new king? Isn't Il bearing himself creditably? No, don't feel depressed before he's even done anything yet. Which kind of does show, the difference between Yu-Hon publicly and Yu-Hon to himself. As we saw earlier, he was like in despair over Il being the new king. But that doesn't mean that like other people get to sulk about it. The only one who shouted "Long live His Majesty Il" was Moondog, just like that guy. That's actually kind of weird. Like that's I get not being super happy about Il being king, but only one person to shout "Long live His Majesty Il." That's like, even if it's like only one to sound genuine in it, maybe. But like the only person to say it? Okay. Seeing as he has so few on his side, I'll have to support him and rally the country around him. Which makes what's going to happen very sad. If Il is going to end up really killing Yu-Hon. Though again, Yu-Hon is kind of a mass murderer, so... Oh, the wonderful moral grays of Yona of the Dawn. Anyway, Yon-Hi continues, Lord Yu-Hon, if I just think about it, it's not a big deal whether I become the king or not. My dearest wish is to protect the royal house and the people. From now on, I'll keep helping my little brother and fighting in the front lines. He hasn't changed from the time we first met. Lord Yu-Hon is still thinking of Lord Il. Maybe this was what I wanted to see. It's all good. Those two definitely will. She thinks it's gonna end well, and, it doesn't end well, even vaguely. Come to think of it, today was the first time I saw Kashi properly. I don't understand what kind of woman she is at all. And Yon-Hi asks him, Kashi? Kashi is... No, and Yu-Hon stops her. No, enough. You get some rest already. And one of the attendants comes in. The tea is here, sir. But I think that's Yon-Hi? No, this is, the attendant who's still in the room. If I may, Lord Yu-Hon, it's about Queen Kashi. The other day she told Lady Yon-Hi a most singular story. She said, Princess Yona is the Crimson Dragon King, and that is somehow connected to His Majesty Il being chosen as the king. Ooh, I'm starting to see the pieces fall into place. I predict, knowing how much Yu-Hon does not really give a damn about the Crimson Dragon faith, the knowledge that he lost the throne to some superstition is not gonna make him happy. What story is that? I also think it's quite... But I remember one thing. After the temple was burnt down, Lady Yon-Hi asked me, just once. I feel like she's Yon-Hi is fading in and out of consciousness. That's why the dialogue is kind of choppy here. Just once. That she wished to look for two priests in training. A girl named Kashi, and a little boy named Iksu. The translator note here. What kind of busybody retains such a trivial event in her memory for 15 years? I don't think it's such a trivial event. I think it's kind of, because I think that was the first time that Yon-Hi saw, was aware of the harshness that Yu-Hon has in him. I don't know. Anyway, especially when when Il married Akashi, it would have definitely triggered something. Anyway, so Yon-Hi falls asleep. Something bad is right about to happen. I can feel it. But Suwon is here. Mr. Minsu. And it's a little baby 7-year-old Minsu. And he's like returning a book. The book you lent me was super interesting. We see that at this point Suwon is also 8, so there's only a year difference between Suwon and Minsu. Anyway, the book you lent me was super interesting. You've already read it? Amazing, it took me 5 days. Ah, Mr. Kaishuk! Oh, it's a young, I guess Kaishuk is this translator. I'm used to calling him Kaisuk. Who's 15 here. So there's that's a bit of the age difference between the two of them. Want to read it as well, Mr. Kaishuk? Huh? I prefer military strategy to medicine. If it's treatises about military strategy, I'll lend you some. Please come to the library. Yon-Hi watches this exchange going on, and she turns to her attendant. This place has become lively, don't you agree? My apologies. Even my son Minsu is under your care. Oh, so here's Minsu's mom. That's a thing. What are you saying? The one chattering the most is Suwon, isn't it? Minsu is a quiet child, and Keishuk is inconspicuous. Besides, since you came to this place, I've been a little more at ease. And Mama Minsu, I'm much obliged. And then we have some, and Yon-Hi's thoughts. There's no specific medicine against the crimson illness. Now I've been just managing with sleeping medication, but it's only natural, right? This illness is similar to a curse, after all. But I've calmed down after I moved here. And then Mama Minsu, I'm reminded that today an illustrious guest is calling on your ladyship, no? That's right. Queen Kashi is coming by invitation. Oh, I can feel this is going to end, but I have a sinking suspicion Yu-Hon is going to kill Kashi, and that's why Il kills Yu-Hon, and that's why Suwon kills Il, and we're about to see the moment the cycle of despair that starts this series comes into being. That's just the vibe I'm getting. Lady Kashi? I've invited her. The proper thing would be for me to go to the castle, but she was worried about me and was gracious enough to come instead. And Suwon hears this. Is Yona coming too? And Yon-Hi tells him, yes, I think she's coming. Yay! Let's all play together, Mr. Minsu. With Princess Yona? I do love the fact, though, that Suwon calls a 7-year-old Mister. There's just something kind of, maybe it's somewhere in the translation that kind of slips in. But it's just deeply funny, Mr. Minsu. Would it be okay for someone like me? Of course. Mr. Keishuk, too. And Keishuk stops him. I'm fine, thanks. The visit of Kashi and Yona to our residence never happened. We learned later that while the carriage was on its way here, Kashi was attacked by rebels and murdered. Were they actually rebels, though? Because that could still be Yu-Hon. Especially if Il just thinks that it's Yu-Hon, it could still lead to everything that happens to start Suwon on his desire to kill Il. Yona wasn't in the carriage and escaped the tragedy. That had been the first time Kashi had left the castle since marrying Lord Il. Because I had invited her to our place. So if I'm right, though, about the crimson illness reacting to stress, to moments of deep agony, it's gonna get worse from here. And Mother, I'm off. We're cut to sometime later. I guess it's not super later, because looking at these lines, it looks like Suwon is going to Kashi's funeral. I'll stay a while in the castle before I come back. Yona will be crying a lot, you see. Yes, be there for her. And Suwon calls out to her, send me a message if something happens, okay? And he leaves, and Yu-Hon comes in. And he asks her, how are you feeling? I'm fine. His Majesty, and then she pauses for a second. His Majesty ill. I wonder how he's faring. I'll go see him later. You make sure to eat and sleep properly. His Majesty ill, too. Must be crying. Go console him. And then Yu-Hon brings her in for a hug. I know. The crimson illness? Since I married you, I've hated the Crimson Dragon King day in and day out. So what if he was the first king? So what if he's a god? I'm not gonna let the things that are precious to me be destroyed. And Yon-Hi listens to that, still tearing up. I feel like he's gonna do something, even if he wasn't responsible for Kashi's death. I feel like, that line feels like maybe he was trying to kill Yona, and he didn't know Yona wouldn't be in the carriage. Maybe I still think Yu-Hon is responsible for Kashi's death. I think it sets everything up in a horrifying series of dominoes. I don't know. Lord Yu-Hon, I'm happy because I have you and Suwon. I'm happy because I have you and Suwon. So just a little longer. Let us be together, please. My last wish wasn't to be forgiven by the gods. Lord Yu-Hon died 2 months after that. Continues in the issue of September 4th. So, yeah, that is the end of 195. I imagine, I feel like unless Yon-Hi never found out how Yu-Hon died. Because, if I recall correctly, the frame story for this flashback is Yona, like, reading Yon-Hi's diary. So she would only know, or we would only have access to in this story, what Yon-Hi knew. She never knew how her husband died. She couldn't tell us in this story. And as I recall, it was Kaishuk, whatever, who has already told us that that Il was the one who killed Yon-Hi, not Yon-Hi, Yu-Hon. Their names are too similar. And hopefully we'll find out more about that sooner rather than later, but something tells me it won't be in this flashback, unless Il does tell her for some reason? I don't know, there's a lot that could happen. But I'm especially drawn to this final line of Yu-Hon's. So what if he was the first king? So what if he's a god? I'm not gonna let the things that are precious to me be destroyed. I feel like that's him saying that this is all about that I still feel like he paid mercenaries or whatever to act like rebels and kill Kashi and Yona. I think Yona was his target. Yona as the Crimson Dragon King was his target. Maybe he was just lashing out. Maybe he thought that maybe if the reincarnation of Hiryuu died, the illness would go away, which seems like it wouldn't have happened. Maybe he doesn't know that. I don't know. But I still think that Yu-Hon is behind. Like, we know he's willing to kill priests. He's willing to kill people. That's, an important part of the Lady Koren's arc. I forget that country's name. Is that Jing? I think it's Jing. Of the Jing arc, is that, Yu-Hon is kind of a brutal murderer when he wants to be. But yeah, beyond that, we see Il's coronation. We see Yu-Hon's reaction to not being chosen, which is, initially not well, but seeing how much no one else likes Il, he decides he's gonna have to like Il for everyone. And then we see the illness getting worse. We see sorry, I'm zoning out. We see Yon-Hi and Yu-Hon and Suwon all move out. And then we get the moment that probably sets off this whole cycle of death and despair that leads into the main series of Yu-Hon's death, again, presumably at the hands of Il. We still don't really know. I don't think Kaisuk is the most reliable narrator. But yeah, this chapter doesn't give quite as much things to chew on as the last one did, but it still moves the plot along at a nice pace. And is setting up for, I feel like we're nearing the end of this flashback. There's not, with Yu-Hon's death, I don't think there's too much left to tell, but I do imagine I hope next time is going to get into the nitty-gritties of Yu-Hon's death. And yeah, that's kind of all I have to say for this chapter. Hope you all enjoy the chapter and the video itself. If you did, free drop me a like or subscribe, or do whatever makes you happy. And remember, your life is your own, okay? Bye!